Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really try to unearth the most fascinating insights. Today, we're embarking on a journey into, well, a truly unique corner of Chinese art and culture. Our mission for you today is to unpack the incredible story behind a dazzling, yet maybe surprisingly controversial, form of Chinese jewelry known as Diancui. Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding an ancient craft that kind of defies easy categorization. We'll explore why these pieces look like shimmering jewels, but are actually made from something far more delicate. And the surprising reasons behind their creation, too. We're going to talk about something. These astonishing ornaments, where the iridescent feathers of a tiny bird become this high art material. You might look at them and think they're enamel, maybe?
Yeah, a lot of people do.
But there's something else entirely, with a whole history and actually a science all their own. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit before we get right into the kingfishers. What makes traditional Chinese jewelry really stand apart from, say, Western traditions? Is there a fundamental difference?
Oh, definitely. What's fascinating here is that Chinese jewelry isn't just jewelry in the way we might think of it in the West. It's part of this broader category called Hanfu peishi.
Hanfu peishi.
Yeah, accessories for Chinese clothing, essentially. So that immediately tells us it's about more than just, personal adornment. It's tied to the whole outfit, the status, the occasion. And the most crucial material for the Chinese for literally millennia was jade. Or nephrite, technically.
Right, jade. You hear about the Jade Emperor, the Jade Gates.
Exactly. It just permeated the culture. And get this, even when their own jade deposits ran out, they kept bringing it in caravans from Central Asia.
Wow.
Yeah, long after the Silk Road was officially closed, it wasn't just pretty. It had profound ritualistic, symbolic meaning, like a bead disc, those round, flat pieces with a hole. Could be a pendant, or it could be placed in a tomb. Very significant. And simple jade bracelets, given from mothers to daughters, were believed to bring happiness, ward off evil spirits, that sort of thing.
So deeply embedded in belief and ritual.
Oh, totally. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about metals. Silver, interestingly, often held more significance than gold.
Really? More than gold?
Yeah, silver was also seen as protective against evil spirits. Plus, it was traditional currency, those heavy silver ingots called lion.
Ah, okay.
Beautiful things. Gold was used too, don't get me wrong, for seals, some ingots, but silver had this pervasive importance. And then you had other materials like coral, pearls, turquoise.
Right.
Cinnabar, too, which is interesting because it was associated with Buddha's blood, but also linked to mercury.
Mercury, like in Qin Shi Huang's tomb.
Exactly, those supposed rivers of mercury. And bone carving was a thing, too, ox bone, or more expensive, elephant ivory.
Okay, so a whole range of materials, each with its own weight and meaning. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Yeah. What about precious, transparent gemstones? Like diamonds, we're so conditioned to see them as the peak of luxury.
Right.
But they seem conspicuously absent in a lot of traditional Chinese jewelry. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really highlights a fundamental difference in aesthetics, I think. For the Chinese tradition, diamonds and other faceted transparent gems were often seen as, well, maybe too vulgar, too bright, too hard, perhaps.
Vulgar. Wow.
Their aesthetic generally preferred cabochons, those smooth, rounded stones. They embody more of a balance, hard and soft, yin and yang. It's a completely different philosophy compared to, say, the De Beers diamond campaigns that shaped Western tastes.
That makes sense, a preference for harmony and balance over just sparkle.
Exactly.
So with that really unique backdrop, let's dive into Diancui itself. The name Diancui translates to points from kingfisher, or studding with kingfishers. How on earth do these feathers become such exquisite ornaments?
Well, like you said earlier, many people seeing Diancui for the first time, they assume it's enamel.
Yeah, I definitely would have.
Because it has this vibrant, shimmering look, but it's actually far more organic. It's made from tiny, iridescent feathers from kingfishers. And these pieces aren't always just solid blue either. The feathers naturally shimmer and shift in color depending on the light. It creates this incredible play of light, this depth.
Dynamic looking.
Very. And, contrary to what some might expect, not all Diancui pieces were strictly jewelry for women. Think about the famous phoenix crowns.
Oh.
They often featured both phoenixes linked to empresses, female rulers, and dragons, which symbolized the male emperor. So it crossed those lines.
Okay, but the big question then is, why use feathers? Why not just use beautiful blue stones like lapis lazuli or turquoise?
Hmm.
Or once they knew how to just enamel them, it sounds incredibly difficult to work with feathers.
It is incredibly difficult, but the answer tells you a lot about the historical context. First off, the Chinese didn't really know how to make enamel properly until the Yuan dynasty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Later on.
Yeah, when the Mongols ruled, they brought in new techniques from elsewhere. That's also when you get innovations like blue and white porcelain starting up. So before the Yuan, enamel just wasn't really an option for this kind of effect.
Got it.
And as for blue gemstones, well, they were heavy. They're expensive. And it would have been practically impossible to get them in the sheer quantities needed for some of these incredibly elaborate pieces, like the crowns.
Right. Covering a whole crown would take a mountain of lapis.
Exactly. So while catching and processing the birds was unbelievably laborious, believe it or not, it was actually more economical for the scale they were working on.
That's kind of mind-blowing. Cheaper to catch birds than mine stones on that scale. So, okay, how was this intricate art actually done? What did these masters do?
This is where the sheer artistry just blows you away. There are masters like Zhao Guangchun is a famous modern restorer whose family passed this secret technique down, actually from father to daughter in her case.
Yeah.
The process involves cutting only the individual tiny hairs, the bobs from the kingfisher feathers, not the whole feather shaft.
That's a little filthy bits.
Exactly. Each tiny barb is then painstakingly picked up with tweezers, pulled completely through a special animal-based protein glue.
Pulled through it.
Yeah, to coat it evenly. And then it's meticulously laid onto a metal base. Often this base is an intricate framework of gold wire already prepared.
Okay.
These barbs are placed so densely, so precisely, that they interlock and create that shimmer, that unique, almost enamel-like effect. It's incredibly precise, eye-straining work. People often compare it to cloisonné enamel because you have those metal partitions, the gold wire separating the fields of color.
Unbelievable patience required. So what did this mean for the birds themselves, these kingfishers?
Well, first off, these aren't tiny little sparrows we're talking about. They're more the size of, say, a jay or maybe a starling.
Okay, decent-sized birds.
Yeah. The Chinese primarily used feathers from two species. The white-breasted kingfisher and the black-headed kingfisher, though. Interestingly, the Chinese name for that one translates to blue kingfisher. And the demand was just immense, so high that local populations couldn't sustain it. This led to really extensive international trade, the Khmer Empire, for instance.
Take Southeast Asia.
Yeah, their kingfisher populations were apparently nearly wiped out by this trade. There's even a suggestion that the construction of Angkor Wat was partly financed by these massive transactions in kingfisher feathers.
That's incredible. A temple complex funded by feathers.
It shows the scale, right? And here's a slightly poignant detail about the birds themselves. Kingfishers are generally monogamous.
Oh.
The male apparently proposes to his chosen mate by diving into the water and bringing her a fish. It's quite a touching ritual, isn't it? For a bird whose feathers became such a vital and ultimately exploited artistic resource.
Yeah, that adds another layer to it.
And then there's the color itself. This is really fascinating. The Chinese term kui in Diancui. It also means emerald, which suggests a blue-green hue.
Okay, blue-green. But the feathers look intensely blue.
Exactly. And here's the scientific twist. Nature actually produces very, very little natural blue pigment, almost none in animals.
Really? So where does the blue come from?
It comes from what scientists call photonic crystals within the feather structure, tiny microscopic structures.
Photonic crystals?
Yeah, they refract light in such a specific way that our eyes perceive the color blue, even though there's no blue pigment there. It's structural color. Same thing happens with morpho butterflies, those incredibly blue ones.
Wow, so it's an optical illusion almost.
In a way, yeah. True pigment-based blue in living creatures is incredibly rare. Restorers like Shagun Guangchun describe the Diancui color as this unique shade, almost like Mother Nature had only one tube of such paint and spent it all on the kingfisher's wings.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Isn't it? And if we connect this back to the bigger picture of Chinese culture, their perception of color can be quite nuanced, maybe different from ours. Take King Washi, blue and white porcelain.
Okay.
The king in that name literally means young green.
Green for blue and white.
Right. But the same character, king, is also used for celadon, which is that classic gray-green glaze. So king can sort of encompass blue-green, blue or gray-green. It shows this fluidity in color description, maybe less rigid categories than we use in the West.
Interesting. A broader spectrum for one word.
Exactly. And one more point on color, it's also interesting that Diancui pieces often use that gold wire outline we mentioned.
Mm-hmm. The framework.
That creates this really stunning visual effect. It's kind of like the teal and orange, or teal and amber effect you see in modern movies, the Lou Emba filter, they sometimes call it.
Oh, yeah, where skin tones pop against blue backgrounds.
Precisely. Human skin often has warm amber tones, and putting it against teal or blue-green makes it really stand out due to complementary colors. The Chinese artists intuitively understood this. The gold and the kingfisher blue-green just amplify each other's beauty.
They really knew what they were doing visually. Okay, so now that we understand the incredible artistry, the materials, the science of the color, how did this craft actually travel through Chinese history? Where did it start, and how did it evolve?
Well, the earliest mentions we have of using kingfisher feathers go way back to the ancient kingdom of Chu during the Warring States period, so we're talking centuries BCE.
Wow, that far back.
Yeah. Apparently, they were used to decorate caskets initially. Some scholars even suggest links to older, maybe totemic practices involving birds.
Okay, starting with funerary art.
Seems like it. And from there, the use expanded way beyond just jewelry or small decorations. We hear about a Chu ruler around 530 BCE wearing an entire cloak made of kingfisher feathers.
An entire cloak. Imagine that.
I know, right? And then later, in 607 CE, the second Sui emperor, Yang famously used a kingfisher feather-decorated palanquin, those covered litters for a big diplomatic visit.
A feather-covered sedan chair. Talk about making an entrance.
Absolutely. They were also used for umbrellas, wall hangings, even crowns for princes, not just empresses or princesses.
So really high-status imperial use early on.
Definitely. Then by the Tang Dynasty, you see it mentioned in poems, like one by Li Hua, the craft started to focus a bit more on smaller items like hairpins.
Ah, the intricate hairpins.
Yeah, and these weren't just decorative either. Chinese hairpins were often quite complex, sometimes designed with little springs so parts would tremble when the wearer moved. And they were also seen as important protective talismans.
Right, jewelry often had that protective element too.
Exactly. So this raises an important question. How did something so prestigious, so incredibly labor-intensive, navigate all the shifts in imperial taste over the centuries? Did it ever fall out of favor?
Good question. Did it?
Well, interestingly, during the Northern Song Dynasty, around the 10th century, Emperor Taizu actually tried to ban Diancui.
Ban it? Why?
It seems it was part of a wider imperial modesty campaign, a bit like those ancient Roman sumptuary laws trying to regulate luxury and displays of wealth.
Ah, okay. Trying to curb extravagance. Did it work?
Apparently not for long. By the time of the Southern Song Dynasty, it was right back in full force. We see it depicted in paintings of empresses wearing these incredibly elaborate phoenix crowns adorned with Diancui.
So the ban didn't stick.
Nope. Then the Ming Dynasty really seems to be when Diancui hit a kind of peak in terms of surviving examples, especially imperial ones. Those spectacular crowns found in the Ming imperial tombs.
Yes, the ones you see pictures of.
Those are now displayed in the Gugong, the Forbidden City Museum, and modern China has really embraced them. Images of those crowns are super popular souvenirs now. Shows their enduring cultural appeal, right?
Definitely iconic.
But then, by the Qing Dynasty, the last imperial dynasty, ending in the early 20th century, Diancui underwent another fascinating shift. What was once almost exclusively for the court became much more widely available.
It got democratized.
In a sense, yeah, or maybe cheapened, depending on your perspective. Emperor Qianlong, who reigned for much of the 18th century, was famous for regulating dress codes for officials and nobles down to the last detail.
Right.
But somehow Diancui seemed to transcend these rules, maybe because the techniques became a bit more widespread, or maybe demand from a growing merchant class, and, well, commoners who could afford some luxury just exploded.
Interesting. So it moved beyond the palace walls.
Massively. And Europeans and Americans started buying these pieces in huge quantities during the later Qing period, too. That's why you find large collections in Western museums now, like the V&A in London and lots in Russian museums as well. It became a pretty common, accessible urban accessory by the end.
It's really incredible to think that something starting so exclusive, so tied to emperors and rituals, ended up as a popular export item.
It's quite the journey, isn't it?
So we've taken quite a deep dive here into Diancui. We went from its ancient, maybe even ritualistic roots through its time as the height of courtly splendor, and then saw its eventual, well, democratization maybe, under the Qing dynasty. We've seen how these tiny kingfisher feathers, through an almost unbelievably intricate process, really transcended their natural origin. They became these shimmering works of art that defy our usual understanding of jewelry, materials, even how color works.
Yeah, and what's perhaps most fascinating, or maybe poignant, is that despite this incredibly rich history, the last factory that was producing authentic Diancui apparently closed down in 1933.
Wow, that early.
Yeah, and its creation is now forbidden mainly due to conservation concerns for the kingfishers, which is understandable.
Of course.
But the legacy absolutely lives on. Performers in the Beijing Opera, for instance, still use these incredible, vibrant Diancui ornaments in their costumes. They're often antique pieces, carefully preserved.
So the art form isn't entirely lost to history.
Not entirely. It's still visible, still has that cultural resonance.
So, thinking about all this, what does this all mean for you listening? We've seen with Diancui how value and beauty are so deeply tied to cultural context, to history, to what resources were even available. It makes you consider how our modern perception of beauty, maybe our focus on monetary value or specific materials like diamonds, might cause us to overlook the incredible ingenuity and artistry behind crafts like this from the past. These incredibly resource-intensive, painstaking crafts.
Right. What skills or materials are we maybe overlooking today?
Exactly. What forgotten techniques or unique materials might we be ignoring right now that could actually become tomorrow's treasures if only we looked at them differently? We invite you to ponder that. What really stands out to you about this incredible, complicated history of Diancui?